What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode of the World of Sports podcast. I'm your host, Deegs, and today we're going to be talking about college basketball and specifically the Kentucky Wildcats. So normally, we all know Kentucky is one of the most dominant programs in the country. John Calipari is a genius when it comes to recruiting, as you always see Kentucky at the very top of recruiting classes, always bringing in the highest and most explosive freshman talent to come in and compete for national championship year in and year out. The Wildcats are also mostly known for sending premier talent to the NBA. They always have a great team for the most part, and such examples of this wonderful talent is DeMarcus Cousins, John Wall, Devin Booker, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Davis. Numerous superstars around the league all called the Kentucky Wildcats their home at some point. So really today we're going to be talking about kind of the opposite of that, and it's going to be the struggles of the Kentucky Wildcats this season. And now this is really a rare occurrence where you see a team go from last year's Sweet 16 berth so close to making it to the Elite Eight and possibly a Final Four berth had they made it to the Elite Eight. Now they lost a lot of their premier talent, De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, Bam Adebayo. They lost their seniors, Dominique Wilkins, Derek Willis, all played big minutes for them, Isaiah Briscoe, just to name a few players. So today we're going to be talking about how this Kentucky Wildcats team has done good things at points, but they've also struggled. And for the most part, they haven't really been the team that we expected them to be this year. So their record, they're 14-4. They have lost to Tennessee, South Carolina, Kansas, and UCLA. Of those four teams, they really only should have lost to Kansas. Kansas is the only team that I do believe is truly better than them. But Tennessee, they were up by a lot. They blew that game. South Carolina, they were up by 12 or 13 at one point. They blew that game. UCLA, they looked uninterested. Didn't look like they wanted to even be there, and they just got spanked by a team that is not better than them, in my honest opinion. So really some good things about this Kentucky Wildcats basketball team for starters is Kevin Knox. Knox, I think, was the seventh recruit coming into this, the number 7th recruit in the ESPN Top 100 coming into this year. He's currently averaging 14.6 points per game, 5.7 rebounds per game, and 1.7 assists per game. On this Kentucky Wildcats team, his main role is to be the fantastic elite scorer that he really shows to be. He's a great shooter. He's got phenomenal touch on his shot. He's really long, tall. I believe he's like 6'9", 6'10", with a really great overall wingspan and a fantastic jumper. A very smooth shot. He's got his offensive game screams potential to be an elite scorer at the next level, and he is this team's number one option. So really, when they've won, it's because Kevin Knox has played well for the most part. He's carried their team to some victories just by his offensive outbursts. And while I don't think he's as advanced of a scorer as Malik Monk was at the beginning of last season, I do think Kevin Knox, while the year goes on, will continue to get better and will continue to prove that he is that elite level scorer that everyone talked about him being before this year. Now, other than Kevin Knox, I think another player who really has done really great things for Kentucky this year is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, originally he did not start, and I don't think that he will start once Quade Green, the actual point guard, comes back. But off the bench, and even when he has been put into that starting lineup, Alexander has been phenomenal. Currently averaging 12 points per game, 3.7 rebounds per game, and 4.2 assists per game. But what he does on the court is he's a great defender. He's really big for a guard. I think he's like 6'4", 6'5", really long. He's a leader out there. He knows what he's doing. He directs the offense. He gets the Wildcats' offense in rhythm and in motion. It really initiates their plays. He's a true point guard, and when Green has not played, he's stepped up and he's been like, okay, it's my role to do this, to do what Quade does, to distribute the ball. He can score. His jump shot really isn't as advanced as you would like it to be, but there's been games where they've won on the back of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Texas A&M was one of them. He really carried them to that game. And Louisville, he had a fantastic game as well. So you really got to look at how I know Alexander really isn't like premier talent. He wasn't like, screaming 5-star recruit. But he does give them depth, and he will give them depth once Quade Green comes back as the guy who can come off the bench and get the job done. If Green's in foul trouble, he gets hurt again, he's not playing well, and that's always something you really want to have. Another thing Kentucky's really good at is rebounding. They are one of the better rebounding teams in the country, and that's mostly because of their really big down low with Nick Richards and P.J. Washington mostly leading that charge. Both of them are great rebounders. They look to get rebounds. Richards fights all the time for offensive rebounds, and Washington is just that big, kind of athletic four that you want in college, and what he'll transition really well to the NBA because of that, I think. So rebounding is always something, both offensively and defensively, that wins games, and it really goes out there and makes a huge impact if you have two guys who can go out there, grab the ball, secure it, and get your offense going, or give you another chance to score some points. So I really think that is going to keep transitioning well. If they can get other guys to do it, their smaller guards specifically, and with the addition of Jared Vanderbilt now back, I think that's going to be really helpful for Kentucky. Is if they can get everybody to rebound, this team will be good. Rebounding wins games. It's been proven that rebounding wins games, and I think they are above average in that category. And the last thing, what they're really good at is they're just a really talented team. You look at the 5 stars that are that were on this team: Jared Vanderbilt, Quade Green, Nick Richards, PJ Washington, and Kevin Knox were this year's 5 stars, and Hamidou Diallo, who actually came early, also was a 5-star last year. And then you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who I talked about earlier, and Jamari Baker. We haven't seen Jamari Baker play a game this year, but he was considered one of the best shooters in the whole class, even though he was not a 5-star recruit. So this team is extremely talented. They really haven't figured out how to play together yet, but once everything starts to mold, once they gain more experience, they will be lethal. And that's why everyone was so high on them this year, and because they brought in some really good talent, and that talent has yet to be put to the test, or yet to be shown, I should say. But when they do, they will be very explosive. Now we're going to talk about some of the bad things this team does. And it's not really bad that they can really control, because they, like I said, they are extremely talented. But it's kind of more of the biggest thing with me for this Kentucky Wildcats team is, if you didn't know, they are the youngest team in the country. They have absolutely no upperclassmen that actually play minutes for them. I don't even know if they have any upperclassmen on their roster. So this is a fresh group of guys who have zero experience whatsoever. The only player that came back last year that actually played minutes for them was Wenyen Gabriel, and he's not very good. And Hamidou Diallo never played an actual game, but he did practice with the team last year. So those two guys are kind of their leaders, but other than that, they're not experienced at all. They don't really know what they're doing. It's basically a bunch of freshmen who are really experiencing college ball for the first time and going up against juniors and seniors that have been doing this for the last 3 or 4 years. So because of their youth, really all the problems I'm going to talk about go back to them have no experience and them being so young. But the maturation process is long, and I think that if they can use this season as a maturation process, come the postseason, they can really do some damage. So for the first thing I have here is they can't really close games out. 3 of their 4 losses they blew leads against. They blew leads against UCLA, Tennessee, and South Carolina. Tennessee and South Carolina were both double-digit leads that they were up against. They kind of don't put their foot on their opponent's throat and just kind of ease it out and let those things kind of let the game slip away from them. So they need to learn how to finish games, to never give up, keep going strong. They need to play with effort. Sometimes they look like they don't want to be there, which is never good. You want to go out there and compete and always play with effort and finish games out. And that's what all the good Kentucky teams in the past, the team that almost went undefeated and won the national championship, Julius Randle's team that went to the national championship, last year's team, those teams closed game out. And they won games that, even if they were close, even if they played bad the whole game, they still managed to close the game out, and they still managed to come out on top. So that's what this Kentucky team is going to need to do. I need to learn how to do. They've already struggled with it a few times, but I think playing in a tough SEC and playing against pretty good competition due to their strength of schedule, they should be able to learn how to do that quickly. Another thing I have here is they play down to their competition quite often. You can't tell me with a straight face that UCLA, Tennessee, and South Carolina are all better teams than Kentucky. Even their first game, they played against some team that Duke beat by 40 the day before, and they beat them by 10. So they play down to their competition, and they also play up to their competition. Louisville, they blew them out. Kansas was a great game going into the last few minutes. So really, this Kentucky team is just because all of this goes back to how young they are. They play down to their competition simply because they're not as experienced as their competition, and they don't know how to play together yet because they don't have any chemistry. These are just a bunch of 5 stars who were the best players in the country. You put them all on one team, they don't know how to play together. So that being said, I do think that there's a potential for them to be able to come together and really fix this, but we'll talk about that later. Now, the final 2 things I have here, they both kind of correlate to each other, is they don't really have a lot of leadership and depth. So they don't, like I said earlier, Gabriel is the only player that came back, but they don't have a lot of like that guy who's going to be the voice of the locker room or it's going to get people hyped up. And that really isn't their problem. It's just it's not really their fault. It is a problem. It's not their fault that they're just so young. None of them have any experience playing in here, but they also don't go really deep. If you look at their bench, outside of their starters, yeah, getting Jared Vanderbilt will help this out, but Ty Wynyard is not very good. And Wenning Gabriel is not really good either. So it's kind of just the five starters, which is normally Green, Richards, Washington, Diallo, and Knox. And then you throw in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in there, and that's pretty. Oh, and Sasha Kalea-Jones is awful. So it's pretty much just those six guys and others. And those others really aren't good. And if you look at every good Calipari team in the past, especially the one that won 35 games, I believe, and they lost to Wisconsin in the Final Four, they had extreme depth. Devin Booker was a backup on that team. So that is something that they lack, and I think will come back to bite them if they don't get their other guys involved and they don't really fix that problem where everyone has to accept their role and everyone has to step up and really play basketball how they know how to play. This is a very talented group, and I do think that they could go 9 guys deep and be fine, but I just don't see those guys aren't just gelling. They're not playing well together. They might be fantastic individual players, but as a unit, they're not playing well. And because of that, they're not really good defensively. You see them go man-to-man sometimes. Calipari has experience with the zone. I don't really know how they're not good defensively because they're all freakish athletes, and they are good at protecting the rim. Don't get me wrong. Washington and Richards get up there. They are premier shot blockers, but other than them, they're not good offensively. They're not good on ball. They're not really good when it comes to keeping people in front of them, and they give up a lot of open three-point shots. Just this past game against South Carolina, in the first quarter, they were just giving wide open shots to people, and they were just kept drilling them. So, really, I don't really see that as a concern because I know Calipari will get them to play defense, and that's what I have here under the outlook, so we might as well talk about that. I know Calipari will get them to play defense because he has in the past. He's taken teams that really don't have premier defensive talent, and he's made them look good. For example, Karl Anthony Towns. We see Karl Anthony Towns now in the NBA. He's a phenomenal player, but he's not a good defender. He was a great shot blocker and a great defender at Kentucky. So I'm not really worried more of the defensive thing. That's kind of more of, they're still getting used to the game. But my biggest concern is how are they going to stack up against older teams? Because once you get deep into the tournament, you don't really see a bunch of teams that are all freshmen. Surely you have the guys who, like the Dukes and the North Carolina, and even not even North Carolina, but you have like the Dukes of the country where they lose players year in and year out because they have such great talent. But then you can go up against like a Kansas who's mostly upperclassmen, North Carolina, and how is this young team of freshmen going to stack up defensively against these older, experienced guys? And we're just going to have to wait and see. They're either going to fail miserably or they're going to give them a great run for their money. So that's going to come with time and really checking out how they play against those kind of teams. We saw them play Kansas well, but we've also seen them struggle against older teams. So you never really know with a young freshman group what team you're going to get, and that's a concern for me because I don't think that the consistency is going to be there all year for them. Like I said earlier, they're not gelling well right now, and they're going to have to figure out how to play with each other. They're going to have to figure out Kevin Knox is their number one scorer, and then Hamidou Diallo can't shoot threes, and he shouldn't be pulling out from three ever. So they're going to have to figure out, they're going to have to identify that themselves. It's not going to, Calipari can tell them all they want, but even with him screaming at them from the sideline like he always does, nothing will change unless the actual players decide to fix something. So a quick projection for this team, I doubt right now, and this kills me to say this because I love Kentucky and I love watching college basketball. I don't think that with how they're playing right now, they can get past the round of 32, if even make the tournament, because right now they're clearly on a decline. They have a really tough part of their schedule coming up right now with Florida and West Virginia on the horizon. So the SEC is really rough, so I don't think they're the clear-cut favorites to win the SEC this year. So as of right now, I don't think they get past the round of 32, but I also want to put like a kind of little asterisk around that, because I think that with the talent on their team, if they can really get this thing going and really figure it out, this team has the potential to make a serious run. I know that their record isn't impressive and their resume isn't impressive, but this team's talent is through the roof. They are, in my opinion, the most talented team in college basketball. They just haven't really figured out how to use it. So that's all I have today on the Kentucky Wildcats basketball team. Hopefully they figure out what they're doing. We'll see how that goes. But if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think, and thanks for watching again. Have a good one.